Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, episode 161.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Those are some of the key highlights, but each and every chapter had a lot of overhaul.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
Welcome to Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast. This episode has two Davids with us, David Coleman and David Westcott, authors of the CWNA Study Guide, as well as some other books. But today we're going to talk about a new edition of the study guide. How are you, David and David?
We're good. Thank you, Keith.
I'm doing good. We actually usually just refer to each other as Westcott and Coleman for just that reason.
It works for me. It's much easier than David C. Yes. Okay. Well, tell us, let's go way back in history. How did you two first get together on your first collaboration with your book?
Yeah, I'll start it. I think the three of us all met each other at a CWSB class. God, how many moons ago? 16, 17 years ago, something like that.
Yeah,
it was a CWSB beta class.
You weren't supposed to use the actual numbers in this discussion.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And I was doing a co-teach of that, and Westcott was a student, and I met him for the first time. And Keith, I think I also met you for the first time at that class. And then I had, and I was working for myself at the time, and I had written a couple of white papers about Wi-Fi, and I got approached by, out of the blue, a phone call from Sybex Publishing asking me if I wanted to write a competing book for a CWNA study guide. There were published, the other book was published by McGraw-Hill at the time. And I said, absolutely, but I didn't have time. I was too busy to do it by myself. So for whatever reasons, Westcott and I had become friends. So I called him up and said, hey, would you be interested in co-writing this book with me? And since then, I think we've written 8 books together.
Yep.
Oh, that's a fairly successful collaboration. I mean, if you guys were a rock band, you'd be famous.
Well,
okay,
I think there was a rock band called David and David on A&M Records, actually.
you would know.
I have seen the photo of your, how do we put this nicely, mullet days?
Yes.
That would be Coleman's mullet days, just to refer.
Yeah, just to be sure we know who we're talking about here. Well, the first CWNA book was like early on. I think at the time, the McGraw-Hill one was written by Devin Aiken,
yep.
And you came up with I don't know if we want to call it a competitor. I'm sure the publishing houses would, but it was soon evident that the Sybex version was like the one you needed to study. So, how many editions have we had since then?
This is the 5th one that we're doing, or that we just come out with. The original one, I think Coleman got approached in 2005, and we published that in 2006. And that was, 586 pages, I think it was. And we're still waiting to see the final number on this one. I think we're at around 1,024.
Oh, that is a monster. Is it in one physical book, or they break it?
Yeah, it's going to be one physical book. And, with each edition, it's gotten better with each edition for a couple of reasons. Number one, as a writer, every time you can go back and look at things you've written before, and you go, "Oh God, I could have written that in such a much better way." And secondly, the technology changes so fast. So we can do a follow up on this if you'd like. But I think one of the reasons the book is going to be so thick this time is this, compared to some of the previous editions, this was pretty much a complete overhaul of the book.
Oh, so from not just adding chapters or doing some minor edits, you started from scratch?
No, not that badly overhauled.
Not that badly, no. But they're really, not that badly. But to begin with, we rearranged a lot of the chapters in a more logical order, and from what it was before. We also did, for the first time, and Westcott will back me up on this, is that we actually deleted a lot of stuff.
Yep.
In the past, we kind of just left stuff in, but this time we deleted a lot of stuff. There's still a lot of things in there that aren't necessarily testable material that's there for historical purposes, but there was a lot of stuff that just did not need to be in there, and we got rid of it. And then, of course, we've added a lot of new things. There's a brand new chapter on 802.11ax. There is a brand new chapter, 90 pages, that we're both very proud of, on WLAN design concepts. There's a brand new completely rewritten chapter on troubleshooting. And we also completely rewrote the chapter on site surveys. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Those are some of the key highlights, but each and every chapter had a lot of overhaul this time around.
Well, that sounds like definitely a major overhaul with a ton more effort. Thinking from just a percentage of your time and effort, how much longer did this 5th edition take than the first time around?
Well, compared to the first time, a heck of a lot less. But compared to any of the other rewrites, a lot more. Because the first time, you sit down and write. I could be sitting down for an hour or sometimes even a night, and I'll get 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs written. Some days you'll get 2 or 3 pages, but there are other times you literally only get a paragraph or 2 written because you're doing research, you're trying to get the right wording, assortment of reasons. So this was not as bad as our original edits. At least I didn't think it was as bad. Because you still had a lot to play with, but any of the new material, you're starting from scratch on that, and you could take 10 minutes to write 1 sentence at times.
I'll definitely back that up. The first book was definitely the biggest challenge, but this book probably the second hardest we've ever done because of the fact that we did more editing than we've ever done before, and we also added more content. But so writing's not easy. Writing a 90-page chapter, you just don't get done in a week. It sometimes can take a full month to write something like that.
And it's so rewarding financially, right? Wink, wink.
Oh yeah, we're filthy rich.
But it's a labor of love. And the whole community, though, kudos to you for putting in that effort. I don't think as a buyer of your products, I've got every book you ever had. No complaints at all about spending the money because you're writing, basically you're documenting up something that in 802.11 is unreadable for normal users and turning it into something the rest of us can read. So thank you for your efforts.
Well, thanks. We don't get rich, obviously, writing the book. Traditionally, the book is sold, I think the best it ever sold, 1 year, it sold 8,000 copies. Traditionally, it sells somewhere in the 3,000 to 5,000 copies a year. And, usually when it comes out, that's usually the best. When a new edition comes out, that's usually when it sells the best. We don't make a lot of money off the books, but it has done wonders for both our careers. I think Westcott will agree with me on that.
Oh yeah.
And even more importantly, Westcott, I'll let you take it from here. Talk about what it is kind of done from the perspective of other people's careers.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what people say to us a lot in terms of after they've read the book and how it's you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It is kind of amazing. I'll tell you a funny story. I taught a vendor class, and like 3 weeks later, I'm in West Des Moines Airport, 10 o'clock at night, standing in front of a national car rental, and all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, Dave Westcott, you wrote the CWNA book." And he takes it out. "Can you autograph it for me?" But it was hysterical. But we've had so many people who have said to us and sent us emails and stuff like that, "Hey, we've read the book and it's changed our lives. It got me excited about the technology." It's kind of like the first CWNA class that I sat with Devin. I sat the second class that he ever ran, and it was fun. And I'm like, I got to get into this stuff. I want to learn about this stuff. I want to get into this wireless stuff. So we've seen it with a lot of different people, and we're very humbled by it. It's we've just kind of got together and wrote a book, and I think we're pretty good at it.
It's been very humbling. All over the world, people come up to us and say, we read your book, and because I read your book, it changed my career, changed my life. I redirected my career. I started making more money. And just hearing that has been extremely humbling.
I'm included in that list of people who used your book to get ahead and launch my own career. So from the beginning, when we all met with Devin and CWSP, it's been a long run. I still teach classes just every week, someplace, doing some little training with some people, and I'm amazed how much of the original that was in your original CWNA book is still valid today. I was about to ask how much is new, and since you kind of went from 1,024 pages, it was more than double. But what have you seen in the original 802.11 Classic or Prime, whatever they call it, that's still the same today?
Well, I would say the RF stuff. That was probably the chapter that needs the least amount of editing each time because it's just physics. So
we have added some new modulation techniques, but the underlying piece is the same.
Yeah, the underlying, when you start talking about modulation basics and start talking about phase and amplitude, it's all stuff you can learn in a high school physics book, quite frankly. So that doesn't really change. What changes a lot is the new Macs that come out, the new standards that keep coming out. The most recent one, obviously, that you're hearing so much about, 802.11ax, and now it just seems to get more and more complex, though, with each passing year.
Yeah, the complexity is how do we get more out of the same basic piece? And the thing that shocks me is that we're still using the same CSMA-CA, and the methods haven't really changed. Only one device can talk at a time. I mean, the whole trick about MU-MIMO was just a trick. It's really only one device can ever talk on a frequency at a time. And now AX is how do we make that more efficient?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're still hoping that'll all pan out with AX. As probably at the time this gets published, multiple vendors are coming out with AXAPs, but we're still waiting on the AX clients. And but yeah, for the first time ever, we're actually seeing an amendment that's about making the technology more efficient as opposed to getting higher data rates and bigger channels.
Yeah, although the marketing people are still going to talk about how it's getting faster and faster, but the technology people know it's really not about the speed. It's really about the efficiency and getting as much throughput as possible, and that's the message we have to get out there.
What do you think about the idea? Some vendors kind of break 802.11 by going to 10s and 5 megahertz wide channels, and AX has kind of the hint of that, but it's kind of on a per individual client basis. What do you think about did you ever see a proposal coming through IEEE to drop from our 20s, instead of going 40s, 80s, 160s, go the other way, 10s, 5s, 2s?
Only in the 4.9 stuff. Besides that, I haven't really seen anything much. The 4.9 gigahertz stuff.
That was in Japan. 802.11j had some of that. It was 10 gigahertz channels, if I remember correctly. So that was actually part of an actual ratified amendment. Obviously, 802.11ax is not necessarily defining smaller channels, but it's defining sub-channeling of the existing 20 megahertz channels.
Yeah, and I mean, that's more complex. It would have been just simpler to drop down to 5s and 10s. Remember 4.9 gig?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, the 4.9, the public safety, and then don't know how many people used it, but definitely was used in the public safety sector.
It did have that ability to have variable size channel widths.
And that I don't remember. So you just educated me.
So this question is for Westcott. You've been writing, would you say, 8 books together? What's the book that you've enjoyed the most?
Honestly, the CWNAs. Coleman and I don't know what it is, but we are a really good writing team. And even back in the first book, I mean, you go to like the CWSP book, the CWAP book, and we wound up having multiple authors besides just 2 of us. And you can hear, you can like read it and kind of say, okay, somebody else wrote this chapter or somebody else wrote that chapter. And we will go back into our books, and I cannot tell which chapter I wrote. The only way I know if I wrote a chapter originally is by the graphics, because I can recognize, I picked that graphic out, or he picked that graphic out. That's the only way we can tell that, this person wrote the book originally, this chapter originally, that chapter, because the way we do it, I'll just get into that real quick. We kind of, put together the design, and then we kind of dole out chapters. And at that point, he'll take a chapter, I'll take a chapter, and we'll write it. Then we swap it with each other. We'll edit it. We'll, make our own changes, add our own stuff to it. And then it goes through all of the editing phases. Each chapter gets looked at probably about 9 or 10 times. Each of us, whoever wrote a chapter, sees the chapter at least 4 times in an editing process. And so, so CWNAs, I mean, all of them, I think, have been the most fun, just because we are a really good team. And, I did a book on my own, last year, and I did not bring a co-author in on that because I worked with other co-authors and it just wasn't the same. And, I have such luck to have, such a good partnership with Coleman that I just didn't want to bring another co-author in because of fear of not getting that same type of output, that same type of relationship.
Great answer there, Mr. Westcott. Coleman, a question for you. Same question, actually. What of all the books you've written, what's your favorite?
Well, gosh, they've all kind of been a labor of love. The CWNAs are baby. It has been for a long, long time. But that being said, I about 2 years ago, we came out with the second edition of the CWSP security book, and that was a lot of fun writing as well. So I'm going to put that in second place. And probably put this go around for the CWNA as first place. Once again, we've written 8 books, but a lot of these have been multiple editions. It is very exciting. It's a lot of work, and when you're doing it, it takes a lot out of you, and it takes a lot of your time, and it can be very frustrating. But when the books actually arrive at your doorstep from the UPS guy, it's pretty exciting. So we're expecting some to arrive here in a couple of weeks, and I'm looking very forward to it.
For Westcott, do you know when the ship date is? If people go on to Amazon and order it, when they might expect it?
Yeah, I believe September 4th, I think, is the ebook. And I believe September 19th is the paper version, the novel, the War and Peace version.
Do you have an idea yet what that's going to weigh in kilos? In kilos.
I don't know. I have no idea. We actually had a bet earlier. We were trying to figure out how many pages it was going to be. I said it was going to be 925. I think Coleman said it was going to be 975 because we actually did take out a lot of stuff from this book. But then the troubleshooting chapter and the 802.11 AX chapter added so much more back in. And our goal, whenever we write a book, our number one goal is to write the best damn wireless book we can, and our number 2 goal is to make sure we cover all the topics so that people can pass the exam. I mean, we're very cognizant of the exam, and that is always a big priority for us. But we've always just said, hey, this is a book for wireless people, and we've added things into the book like ATEX and NEMA and things like that that were never in the CWNA before. But I had some involvement with some outdoor stuff, and dealing with outdoor and and even indoor and combustible environments and stuff like that. It's kind of like, okay, these readers some of them are gonna be working in mines or in oil environments and stuff like that, and they better know that you can't just put things up in an environment where something can explode. So that stuff was added.
Okay, actually, that leads me to another question. I just happened to be in a mine about, I don't know, it was a 90-year. No, I can't even tell you to figure out where it was, but it was a very deep, deep mine, and they were having the same problem with the Wi-Fi. Have you found any vendors who sell Wi-Fi client gear that meets those specs?
I haven't dealt with that in a while, so I don't know. I mean, there's lots of really smart people out there who do that. I don't deal with that side of it, so no. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just getting free consulting since you had you on the podcast. I thought I could get an answer for you right there.
If I knew, I'd be happy to tell you.
Yeah, and so Coleman, can you answer the next question? Is you've seen a lot of, I mean, in your whole career, you've seen a lot of communities. What do you think about the community of wireless professionals and how well they get along and share knowledge? Is it much different than you've seen in other industries?
Oh, there's no question. Well, I mean, just on Twitter, even there's this community of people that communicate with each other. And then, of course, I'll go ahead and put in the plug for WLAN Professionals Conventions, and that you have every year in Phoenix in the United States. And I guess you have one coming up here in Prague as well. There's a very active community and online, as well as gets together at these events, as well as the CWNP conventions. So I would say it was definitely a more knit community and a community that likes to share knowledge and information. Now, not to say that there's a little bit of infighting sometimes, because it is a very opinionated group. So we actually, in one of the chapters of the book about WLAN design concepts, we start off talking about if you put 200 WLAN professionals in a room to discuss WLAN design, you'll get 200 different opinions. That being said, I think you'll find if you're new to the wireless LAN community and you and you join it and you start participating, I think you will find that people are very open and willing to share information and knowledge with you.
How do you think that happened? I mean, it feels kind of organic, like it just happened, but you've been around since the very beginning. And what do you think was the impetus for why we have such a sharing attitude?
I think a lot of it probably has its roots in the CWNP program that got started, and probably because it was initially it was a very small community. There wasn't a lot of people. But as the technology grew, and because we all kind of knew each other, as new people started coming in, we just started kind of welcoming them as well.
Well, it's worked amazingly well. So I think that's pretty good. Well, we've been on almost 25 minutes now. Just one final question for each of you. And Westcott, what's up with you not showing up where you're supposed to be? I mean, there's a whole hashtag, "Where's Westcott?" So what's going on with that?
Unlike Coleman, I'm a self. Yeah. So
that's for Westcott.
Okay. So how did I get it? That was Coleman's doing. He was at either Wireless LAN Pros conference or the CWP conference, and I wasn't there. And so he put a "Where is Westcott" hashtag and put my picture up on the screen. And then that progressed. I think a later conference, I was in Tokyo at the time teaching, and I took a picture of myself and sent it on Twitter and saying, hey, I'm in Tokyo. And somebody else put a Batman mask on that and retweeted it. And then it kind of just got into, see Westcott and Batman together at the same place. So that's where that came from. I'm a self-employed person. I've been self-employed for 30 something years. And, I don't have a vendor. I don't have a company footing my bill, paying me a check weekly. And so conferences come around. If I go to a conference, the conference costs me money, and I lose a week's worth of work. And so it's kind of I typically I'm busy 45 to 51. I've even done 52 weeks of billable in a year. Not actual weeks, but I've taught some night classes in Asia or Europe. At the same time, I've taught some day classes. So I'm just a workaholic, a capitalist, and so that's kind of why I haven't hit the conferences. Hopefully maybe in February or March.
Well, we'll see. Don't feel bad if we keep posting Where's Westcott. We want you there. We'd love to have you. So it's done out of love.
I understand that. I appreciate it. I play into it too. I think it's funny. That's the reason why I haven't been there. So hopefully you might see me teach a class at pre to one of your conferences. To your next conference in the States, and if we can get that class to run, I will teach that class, and you'll finally say post here is Westcott hashtag.
We would love to do that. And the last one for Coleman. What's next in Coleman's career? You've had your own company. You've been with Aerohive. Is you staying with Aerohive? Is this? Sorry, I'm not trying to find out what you're doing with your personal life. Just you're writing this new book. Is there more books, more projects?
Well, I've actually been doing a lot of writing for Aerohive as well. So I've actually wrote my first dummies book that was paid for by Aerohive. It's about 802.11ax. Some of the content was actually from the forthcoming CWNA book. And there's even more content about AX in the CWNA book, but that was my first dummies book. I have multiple writing projects going on at Aerohive all the time, as well as I'm doing a lot of more evangelistic type stuff for the company. That's actually my title now, a senior technical evangelist. So more speaking, more writing, a lot of blogging, and so yeah, for now, I'm still going to be at Aerohive for a while. It's been almost 9 years, but I'm getting up there in age. So one of these days, I do anticipate going into some form of semi-retirement, just not yet.
Well, and you're a video star now too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have a face for radio. Let me put it that way.
And the voice works really well on those videos too. So. It's just, I can see a lot of our in social media is moving from only text to video to audio, and now we're adding videos in the mix as well. Well, thanks to both of you for talking about this. We will get this posted up online and add it to our WLAN Professionals podcast, but specifically we'll get it out and time it to go along with the launch of your new book. And if anyone needs a book, we'll have links to the Amazon, both the ebook version and the paper version. And if you're anything like me, you'll buy them both. I use them in two different ways. As a reference, I want to have it on my iPad so it's around all the time, but I really don't want to carry that big monster around. But for actual reading and studying, I like the paper copy. So they both have uses, and I'm sure these guys wouldn't mind if we bought two of them. So thanks for your time. Thank you, Westcott.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And thank you, Coleman.
Thank you, Keith. And for all of you out there, if you haven't been to one of Keith's WLAN professional conferences, go. It's worth the time and the money.
Thank you much, guys.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you.
Okay.
Thanks, Keith.
Bye-bye.
Tools review.
This section, we're talking about some of the supporting documents and resources we've added in the WLAN Pros Notebook. And this one specifically is on 802.11 Wireshark Filters. It includes two ways of looking at Wireshark Filters for 802.11. One is a graphical one. This is one on the right, and it shows graphically how the whole frame in 802.11, the header, is put together and how each of the pieces kind of ties together, and also lists the actual filter that you can be using in Wireshark, kind of in a graphical mode. The second set on the left is specific to, you can look up a type that you're looking for. Say you wanted a control frame or one of the management frames or all management frames. We've just added a quick lookup for the filters you might want to use depending on what you're looking at. So we just added this resource that if you're in Wireshark, you're looking at 802.11, sometimes you forget the code of how it works and thought you might use a resource. I find myself, whenever I'm in Wireshark, flipping to this page to make sure I'm putting in the exact right filter that I want, so I'm not seeing more than I need to do my analysis.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Wireless LAN Pros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter at Keith R. Parsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.